Welcome to the Online Great Books podcast, brought to you by OnlineGreatBooks.com, where we talk about the good life, the great books, great conversation, and great ideas. Welcome to the Online Great Books podcast. I'm Scott Hambrick, and there's Karl, and we were already talking, before I did the intro there, about our Hewlett-Packard reverse Polish notation calculators.
Yeah, you have to get one of these if you're serious about numbers ever.
And Karl said that money makes his brain turn off. But I don't understand that, because it's just numbers. It's just scorekeeping, and you know how to use a RPN calculator, so how does this work?
I don't know. I'm kind of a polymath, right? I can do a whole bunch of stuff.
Yep.
But there's a couple of areas where I have tried to learn it and tried to learn it better. And like probability and statistics, my brain turns off a bit. And money, my brain turns off. And so like learning about investments and everything, I can do it, but it's, diving into like learning about Tolkien's made up languages, I could do that for hours. But compound interest, I have to actually think now, wait, what is it? Is it like the rule of 72 or something,
Yep.
It's harder for me to focus on that. It's harder for me to grab it. It's like a shadow and mist.
Interesting.
Well, it's like the elves, they can do everything, but then they see these hobbits doing their stuff and it's like, it's too quick for them, or it's not like the hobbits are there making their farms, making their gardens, having babies, and the elves are living thousands and thousands of years. And, they to enter into Shire talk and think is for them a little bit. It's a shift for them. Does that make sense?
No, I'm not sure. But this time, we just Karl and I have been reading. He's been hounding me for close to 3 years to read Lord of the Rings because I have not ever read it. I tried to read it sometime in the early 80s probably, and it left me cold.
Yeah, I have to read the disclaimer first. Okay, here's the disclaimer. If you have not watched the movies, don't. Do not watch the movies. Read the books. You are not allowed. I will find you and scold you if you watch the movies before you read the books. I like the movies very much. I have the extended edition. I've watched them a whole bunch of times. They're visually stunning, but they change things from the book. And if you don't read the book, you won't know what they got wrong. Okay? So don't let your first experience of Lord of the Rings, of Tolkien's genius, be Peter Jackson's version.
Oh.
Wait until you read it, and then you can enjoy the movies. I give you permission. I'd probably skip the Hobbit movies. I think they went too far.
What does that mean?
I think they do things that are un-Tolkien-y. I think there's a few adjustments for dramatic purposes in the movies. There are gross adjustments in The Hobbit. There are things that would never, ever, ever, ever happen. I only saw one of them. Look, all right, spoiler. Okay, so here's a spoiler. The Hobbit movies have a love affair between a dwarf and an elf. This would never happen.
Right.
Never, ever.
Is it because their genitals wouldn't match?
I don't know. That elf lady, she's like 50,000 years old, right?
and tall.
Yeah, elves are pretty much immortal, and dwarves are quite different. They're much closer to humans.
You're such a geek. Like, you talk about all these things like they're real. Everybody knows that elves are like immortal, and it's ridiculous.
Well, right. That's part of the point. So if you haven't ever read Tolkien, and you've heard of elves and orcs and dwarves and all of that, if you played Dungeons and Dragons, or you've watched any sort of fantasy movie, everything that you think you know about these types comes from Tolkien. It's him. Okay. I think The Lord of the Rings is like the first Led Zeppelin album. There you are listening to 60s rock, and it's light and happy and everything, and then you put in Led Zeppelin 1, and it's completely different.
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings, there were a couple of precursors, but not many. But the whole genre of fantasy literature, creating a world that isn't this world and giving it a history, that's all Tolkien. He's the originator.
That world building thing. Why is this a great book, Karl? Why are we talking about this here?
Okay, so lots of people like it. a great book, for one thing. It is a book that lots of people have read that influences everything that comes after it. It is, when you ask the people and not the critics, it's the number one book of the 20th century. And like I say, everything in literature after that borrows from him. Anything that's in speculative fiction or fantasy literature, which is a big chunk, follows that. That doesn't mean it's necessarily good. It just might be popular. I think
it's good.
I think the things it says about human nature are very good and revelatory, and it has a lot to say to you, perhaps, dear listener, about how you ought to relate to the world. You know, I was listening to this. I've read it a lot, and I was listening to it on my way down to Texas and back. We had a conference to go to. I tell you, there's parts of this book I'm just crying my eyes out, you know, and it gets me every time I read it. There's parts of your spirit you might not know that you have, that this thing appeals to. At least that's my experience. I mean, maybe you just think it's a book about a long walk, you know, a bunch of people go on a long walk to do something. But I think there's much more than that to it. For example, one of the things I noticed, everybody does poetry.
Everyone in there does poetry, or their songs, or whatever.
Yeah, everybody does poetry. So it might seem kind of weird to you. We don't do poetry very much at all, but I was thinking about that. So going to get into the story a bit. So if you haven't read them, you might want to wait until you listen to this. But if maybe you, I don't know, I'm not going to worry about spoilers. If you continue listening past this point, I'm not going to worry about spoilers, at least for Fellowship of the Ring.
It's an old book. Everybody kind of knows what happens, right?
Yeah, yeah. And so my favorite, and I was choking up a little bit just as I was writing down the notes for it, Gimli the dwarf and Galadriel. Okay. So just to tell you who these people are, Galadriel she's a really, really old elf lady. So the elves, to make an extremely long story short, elves are kind of mythical things that they live forever, and some of them are really, really old, and Galadriel's one of them. So if you ever read the Silmarillion, she's in it. And then she comes across the water and lives in Middle-earth, so she's thousands and thousands and thousands of years old. She's got this little enclave of happiness and joy and light called Lothlorien. And elves and dwarves are kind of enemies, because dwarves, they've had some battles, you know. Elves want to make pretty things. Dwarves want to make artifacts and might chop down trees to do it and, you know, have some just completely different views on life.
The dwarves are the Birmingham English. It's like they're like Isidore Kingdom Brunel, you know. They like factories and forges and quarries.
Well, they're not quite factories, but they like, they're
industrial.
Yeah, things of beauty made by the hand. When they first meet, Galadriel, she starts quoting dwarven poetry to him. So this is page 356, I think. She starts telling him how beautiful, like they have this place called Moria, okay, which is, if you've seen the movie, you shouldn't have seen the movie, but it's underground, and it was a great big dwarf city. She starts talking and says, you know, dark is the water of Keladzarm, and cold are the springs of Kibble Nala, and fair were the many pillared halls of Khazad-dûm in elder days before the fall of mighty kings beneath the stone. So that's a bit of straight-up dwarf poetry. You know, you're talking about, I know there aren't really dwarves, but imagine there were. This would be the kind of poetry that they would make. They'd make poetry about caves under the mountains and the glorious things they built there and the great lanterns they made and the deep pools. And it wouldn't be about trees and flowers and things. It wouldn't be elfish. And she reaches out to him and says this, and then the dwarf, hearing the names given in his own ancient tongue, looked up and met her eyes, and it seemed to him that he looked suddenly into the heart of an enemy and saw their love and understanding.
It's like when I meet a Canadian that knows Bob Wills songs.
Yeah. Yeah. And this story between Gimli and Galadriel, so they have their parting. So if you imagine, what's the basis of friendship, I think, is not necessarily that you find the other person pleasant, that you're buddies, that you're drinking buddies. You know, I don't think that's a fair bit for friendship. I think it's loving the same things.
Mm.
If you and I just personally didn't like each other, but we both loved the thing that we're doing, I think we could still be friends.
Right. Yeah.
You don't have to like your jokes. You know, I'm not saying I don't, but I don't have to in order for us to be friends. If you have a goal that you share, right?
Yes. In showing, they create this relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And then
based on poetry.
Yeah. And then Gimli throughout the rest of the book will cut you if you say anything slick about her.
Yeah. And so the scene that gets me every time, it's at the very end, they're leaving. So because she knows his poetry, he knows that she can see the things that he loves. And now, you know, he just loves her. It's not romantic, of course. It's like medieval.
Just chivalric.
Yeah, you have the fair lady.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's giving gifts to everybody as they leave her land. Like she gives Sam a little gardener box, which we should talk about at some point. And then she turns and she says, Gimli's been quiet the whole time. And what gift would a dwarf ask of the elves? None, lady. It is enough for me to have seen the Lady of the Galadrim and to have heard her gentle words. And then they're all in awe because, you know, he's like the industrial dwarf. He's not supposed to be. You can hear a little bit of English class structure going on.
For sure.
This.
Right.
And then they insist. And then he says, there's nothing, Lady Galadriel, nothing unless it might be a single strand of your hair, which he says he's going to make an heirloom of his house and a pledge of goodwill till the end of days. He just wants one of her. She gives him 3, but he wants one golden hair. And as he's going down the river later, he's seen so much beauty that he didn't know there was in the world, and his boundaries have been expanded. And he's talking to his friend now, the other elf, the elf that's on the journey, Legolas, and he are now best friends. You know, for the rest of the book,
he gets him to ride a horse.
Yeah,
he doesn't want to do that.
And Gimli gets him to go down in the caves and see the beauty of the caves. But Gimli says this about this journey, that they're going to destroy the ring. Torment in the dark was the danger that I feared, and it did not hold me back, but I would not have come had I known the danger of light and joy. He's seen so much beauty now that it's all going to be, it's kind of all going to be downhill from there, right?
Yep.
Nothing is ever as good as the light and the joy, which, I don't know, if you think about it, you ever know somebody that is like stuck in a bad life, is not living a good life, and I guess they're content, you know, and then maybe, I don't know, maybe you invite them over for dinner and they see an actual functioning family.
Right. Yeah.
And now they're ruined. And now they know that they're missing something.
Yes, I have known those people and done that. But I was thinking of when you meet your wife, you've got this euphoric period, you know, and a lot of people just mourn that forever when that's gone, because it wears off, you know.
Mm-hmm.
If you're lucky, it lasts 9 months or something.
Yeah.
And a lot of people just mourn the loss of that forever, and it ends up ruining sometimes the relationship. The loss of that.
Yeah, the elves in this book, they're not like fairies. They're, unless you realize fairies are dangerous.
Yeah, they're not like slight. They're not sissies.
Yeah, they're the big powers in the world, but they're leaving. So it's like in the Odyssey, the gods are all leaving. The elves are leaving Middle Earth, which is what it's called. It's like Midgard. It's the place in the middle. And they're all going back home. But one of them says something about fighting the long defeat. So you have a sense like there's entropy.
Yeah.
Which is in charge. And the whole world's running down, and they don't really hope for victory. They hope for some light and joy. You know, maybe some kind of renewal.
Right.
It's like the Barrow Wight. There's these ghouls in the tomb. The ghoul, of course, has some poetry, and it's all about, you know, when the sun and moon have withered and died. That's how long you're going to be lying here. You know, that it's not creative. The evil forces in Lord of the Rings are not creative. They take what's good and they draw it down and they twist it, and there's no end game, right? There's just destruction
and control.
Yeah.
Is there control?
I guess maybe we should talk about the ring a little bit. So what is the ring, Scott Hambrick?
It's a ring.
And what does it do?
it corrupts everyone that has the thing, as far as I can tell so far. I've read books 1, 2, and 3 of the 6 and just started the 4th one. So I'm about halfway through here. The bearer of the ring, at first you find out, when they put this ring on, they become invisible. It's Gyges' ring at that point, the ring of Gyges. And it was forged many years ago, along with a number of other rings. These other rings are lesser rings and some were given to dwarves and some were given to elves and others were given here and there. And I'm sure you remember the whole inventory of rings. And I don't.
Well,
but this
I do because I'm a nerd.
Right?
Yeah.
And you've read this 11 times, and I'm halfway through the first time. But this is the ring to rule them all. But the bearer of the ring, when they wear that ring, they're invisible. But it changes the person who uses the ring as well. The having and the using of the ring changes them.
Yeah, one of the cool things, we never quite find out exactly what the powers of the ring were. If you had it in a game, like if you found the One Ring in Dungeons & Dragons, there'd be like a sheet showing you all of its powers.
Right.
You never do that. Tolkien leaves corners and shadows in the book. Hints at stuff and then leaves you to fill in the gaps. We don't know what it does other than make you invisible, and it gives you power to see, and if you willed it correctly, if you're strong enough, you can use it to compel other people. You can use it for power. So there's a few times where people want the ring. Everybody wants the ring. And there's some cases where people are offered it, like Gandalf is offered it. And Galadriel is offered it. And Saruman wants it. So these are Gandalf is a wizard, I guess. So Saruman, and Galadriel's this elf princess, elf queen, and she says, "I could take it, and I would be a great queen, and I would rule in light and glory, and everyone would love me." And I think it might be Gandalf who says, "And I would take it with a desire to do good." Right? There'd be things that you could set right.
Mm-hmm. That's the progressive temptation, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. If you, dear listener, see things that are wrong in the world, I bet you want to fix them, right? If only they did everything the way that you know it should be done.
Right.
The world would be better. Well, if I give you the ring, now you can make it happen. If you had the ring, you would have a good political career.
Right.
And you could fix everything, but Gandalf says to Saruman somewhere, "He that breaks a thing apart to see how it works has left the path of wisdom." You know, you could break everything and remake it, but you've broken everything. Boy, it's tempting. You know, our friend Walker Percy says somewhere in the book, tenderness leads to the gas chamber. You know, compassion, the desire to do right, leads you to do stuff which then causes you to compel people. There's a connection between wanting to do right and power and abuse. And who knows, maybe Sauron started wanting to make things right. Sauron's the big bad guy, at least in this book.
Gandalf says, "Perilous to us all are the devices of an art deeper than we possess ourselves."
Yeah.
The ring's dangerous. But when I read that, I was like, yeah, the internet.
Yeah, sure. The internet, we can make social media. We can manipulate. We're doing a big social experiment, and it might ruin us all.
Yeah, we don't know what we're doing.
So let's talk about hobbits, because hobbits are these little creatures. They're about 3 feet tall. To your eyes, they would seem as children. That's one thing, how they're described. They've got hairy feet, and they live in a place called the Shire. And what do? What great task do they do?
They live the good life. That's what they do.
They live the good life. Yeah.
They have their tobacco and their food.
And their babies, and they give each other presents on their birthday.
Yep.
So if it's your birthday, you have to give presents, which means you're going to get like 3 presents a week.
Yep.
Forever.
Do they re-gift? I didn't see that.
Sure. Yeah, you can re-gift. So there's actually a word for it. It's called a matham. It's a thing that keeps getting given around the neighborhood. I'm sorry. Yeah, I can remember all this stuff, but the finance stuff, I'm going to forget it. I have to look it up. Tolkien writes about them. They're just undergoing the business of living. And yet, of all of the wise are tempted. Like Boromir, who's one of my favorite characters, is this mighty man of war from Gondor, which is Gondor's like this borderland country that's protecting all of the countries behind it through its constant vigilance. And Boromir wants to do it better, and he's very tempted by the ring and actually makes a play for it, which causes trouble. But the hobbits are more resistant. Frodo carries this thing all the way for 3 big books, 1,000 pages, and he is affected by it, but not nearly as quick as anybody else. And I wonder if there's some kind of statement about
clean living.
Yeah, clean living. Like, so there's British class stuff underneath this. So the hobbits would be sort of like the
northern farm folk.
Yeah, the not London people, the people with the weird accent and the quaint ways.
Yeah, and they like their beer and their pipe and their fire, their hearth.
But you're not going to change them.
Right. They're the salt of the earth.
Yeah, the people you would make fun of. And some of the large people do make fun of them, like Saruman especially. Hobbits are silly to him. For me, that's touching and important. Like, if you're good at stuff and you're smart and you do well, you're going to have the temptation to look at other people as being, silly and stupid, and yet they're the ones that save everything. Especially there's Frodo.
Well, they're the ones that dig the ditches and make the plumbing work.
Yeah. So if you were in trouble, whom would you trust more in your town? Your local councilman or your local plumber?
The plumber.
Yeah, come on over and help me with this. It's going to be solid to get the job done and not have an angle. And so there's hobbits. So there's Frodo, who is, I guess, the lead hobbit.
Right.
But he's got this servant, the guy, his gardener. Samwise Gamgee. It's a cool name.
All the names are good. He's just so good. He's just so good with language, Tolkien.
Yeah, and you can't imagine the characters having any other name after.
Meriadoc Brandybuck.
Yeah, but Samwise is the silliest of them all, right? I guess. He's a gardener.
Although, as the story goes on, they all get wiser and hipper. They're not frozen in character. I'm at the point here where they've essentially captured Gollum. And you get to be Tolkien lets us be privy to some of Sam's inner dialogue, and he's wisely cautious about Gollum. And by the way, not only does like Pippin and Merry and Sam get more wise, and it's shown in the writing, we also get more and more distance from Frodo as I read on.
Mm-hmm.
Tolkien is setting him apart more and more, and it's clear that something wacky's coming. It's clear that he's getting set apart, and that he's different. He's differentiating him as we go.
Well, and he's carrying the ring the whole time. This thing, even if you're not wearing it, it's like whispering to you. You could be a Hobbit Lord. It's a big burden to carry. There's 4 that go on the journey. So Merry and Pip and Frodo and Sam, and they cause trouble wherever they go.
Do they cause it? I think it follows them. They cause it at the end,
Well, by trouble, I mean setting things in motion.
Okay, fair enough.
I don't mean, badness, but in the middle books, the trees would never have awoken if it weren't for Merry and Pippin going in the forest. What they do, they go and they're poetic. They've never been out of the Shire, and they're provincial, but they go out and they're able to see the beauty of all of these places that maybe if you're accustomed to it, you don't, And so Sam will just pop up some elvish poetry right in the middle, and everyone's shocked. So I live in a place with a lot of accents too, just like England. It'd be like somebody from 103rd and Pulaski just declaiming Homer in the middle of the square.
Right.
In a real flat Chicago accent. It would seem out of place.
Yeah.
And so you do that the whole time. It's a very kind view of human nature, that these people, they can see all of this greatness that maybe you didn't see.
They're clean.
Yeah. And when they see it, the people they're talking to see it again. My read through this time I've been thinking about the poetry a lot. Which
is my least favorite part.
Your least favorite part? Mm. Need to make poems about Tulsa. What rhymes with Tulsa?
I don't know, but Tulsa, Oklahoma is a slut, K-O backwards. Or K-O a slut backwards.
Well, no, you did that a couple of times ago, you showed me the Tulsa Man, the oil drilling man.
Yeah, the golden driller.
Yeah, and so there are things about your country that you might have forgotten. I think it would be, I know it's never going to happen, but I think it would be good if we all wrote bad poetry.
Yeah.
Or more of us wrote bad poetry.
Like the prosthetic Vogon Jelts. There's just some geek stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Ode to a lump of putty I found in my armpit. Yeah.
By the way, Gimli slays 42.
Did you count?
Well, he and Legolas, or whatever his name is, they're given a running count every time. You know, they're like, there'll be a lull in the battle. He's like, I've got 21. He's like, I got one more than you. You know, yeah. So he killed 42. At least he claims he did.
Yeah, it's good fun. So why would you make poems in the first place? The thing about a poem is it's memorable. It has rhythm and rhyme, and you remember.
It's how they transmit culture in Middle-earth.
So like Tom Bombadil is a merry fellow, bright blue his jacket, his boots are yellow. Well, now you remember him, and you have the song, and you can call him up to mind any time. And so you remember where you're from and who you are by your poems. I don't know that we do that much. You and I were talking about, with Double D, Darren Deaton, and producer Trent, we were talking about rock and roll songs at breakfast, and that might be the closest we have.
Yeah, and that's why we've got such ready access to music. That's why nobody's writing their own, probably.
Yeah, but if you did, so then I come and visit you, you tell me some of your poems, some of your folklore, some of your culture, and if I can appreciate it, now we're friends.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, Frodo is called an elf friend, which is a good thing to be. But I think it's Goldberry. Goldberry recognizes him as one because he responds in poetry. You know, he's got that heart. He can see the beauty around him, and he can see the beauty from other people's points of view, and that's an elf friend. You know, when you can hear the story of that girl Nimrodel. Elves have a lot of sad stories, and they're a lot about separation. She and I think I can't remember the guy's name. Can you call an elf lord a guy?
Sure.
I don't remember the guy's name, but they were going to both go across the water back to their homeland. There's a lot of detail on that. You need to read the Silmarillion to get that, or don't. It's fine. But he's going away to the west, and for some reason she doesn't make it. And he's on the boat and he's leaving. It's time to go. And he's cursing the boat that's taking him away from her. And for some reason she vanished. Maybe the orcs killed her. I don't know. And it's just a parting forever. And lots of songs like that. But, you know, you hear the song and you can get a sense. Look, elves don't exist. I know that.
Are you sure you know that? Are you sure?
I'm not sure. But reading the songs, you get a sense of what they are. Even just in Tolkien's imagination, the songs tell you about what these things would be. In my best moment, I like sitting and talking to people, or sometimes I just like listening to them. I might sit in the corner with my beer and listen to other people talk.
Yeah.
And I'm just filing away. What are they like? You know, what do they do? Learning from them by the things that they love. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. The book, I've enjoyed every word of it, but it continues to grow on me. The names, the use of language, so good. Theoden.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what kind of name is that? We know a little bit about theology and theism. We know a little bit about Odin. Yeah,
so you're a little bit ahead of me, but in my rereading. So you've got different groups of people in this book. As you read it, you might find something that appeals to you, some kind of music or story that appeals to you. The writers of Rohan appeals to me quite a bit. Mm. So Gondor is this old country. It's been there forever. Its culture is very, very old. They've been guarding the passes for forever.
Gondor.
The door, I guess.
Door.
Yeah.
I don't know. Everything alludes to something. I mean, I got to think that he picked every one of these words that he made up for a specific reason. I mean, he tells us that we'll be shot or whatever if we try to read anything into it. But
and Mordor,
right?
Mor, M-O-R in Indo-European languages is death,
right?
Yeah, the guy was in World War I. He says somewhere all his friends were dead by the time he was like 20. But he had been working on this stuff. My boy does this. My boy John does this. He has this entire world, block world, that he's worked out whole histories of. And Tolkien was doing the same thing his whole life, just as an escape. Like the Evening Star is this guy Arundel. Oh, I'd have to look up all the details. He went west to get help from the elves, or from the, I guess, the closest thing to gods that there are in this book. And they said, all right, we'll go help Middle Earth, but you can't go back. Here's this boat with a star on it, and now you have to sail the sky. And there he is. I think Tolkien wrote that when he was a real young man. He just had this name come to him, and he wrote it. And so all of these stories are things that he's been building up for years and years and years. So everything you see in the book has a history to it that he might not ever tell you.
Yeah.
But somewhere in his notebooks are the histories to this. If you just read a bestseller off the New York Times list or something, it might be a good story, but it's going to seem flat if you've read a bunch of Tolkien.
Yeah.
Because it's a story of a couple of people. I was thinking about this. There's a lot of times where they just hang out and have food and talk.
Mm-hmm. Lots. The inn at Bree, is it Bree? I love that, where they meet Strider. It's, I don't know, 40 pages of English pub life, something like that,
Yeah.
you know? But it's great.
Yeah. Yeah, they go to Rivendell and they stay there for a month, you know, and they go to Lorien and they stay there for how long, who knows. There's a lot of staying around and sharing culture, you know. It's leisurely. The book doesn't hurry. You could cut a whole bunch of it and give the essentials of the story. But you would not get the essentials of the characters.
The book just flies, though.
Yeah.
It just flies.
Scott, have you ever seen, you don't watch too many movies. You ever see, there's animated movies by Miyazaki. It's a Japanese filmmaker.
Mm-mm.
There's one called Spirited Away. I think your kids might have seen it.
Yeah, they have.
Miyazaki he'll like animate 5 minutes of grass waving in the breeze. And it's beautiful, you know, or characters are doing dishes. And it's just characters doing dishes. and you can imagine him storyboarding it, because everything has to be, in writing, everything's created from scratch, and animation, everything's animated from scratch. We're going to spend time watching people do dishes.
Right.
Yeah, because that's what people do. You know, people do. They sit and they have meals and they talk and they share their love for the things that they love. And if you make it into an action movie, The Lord of the Rings, you know, and do movie trailers and everything, which you have to cut so much out that it can distort the sense of it, which is, for me, it's like, it's a hymn to beauty. And beauty takes time.
I mean, he takes his time. Although it's not slow.
Right.
Do we need to even recap what the thing is? And we haven't even done that. We're just talking about it.
Yeah.
Bilbo has the ring, and he got it a long time ago. And he got it in a book long, long ago. And he's old. And his young cousin, Frodo, comes and lives with him. And Bilbo decides it's time to hit the road again. You know, he's one of the few hobbits that has gone a-trekking. And he decides it's time to go do that again. And he has a birthday party and splits and leaves the ring to Frodo because Gandalf told him to, and he didn't really want to do it. Yeah, he said he would, and then when it came down to it, he wasn't going to, and he made him leave it. And then Frodo lives there by himself for a time. And then he finds out that trouble's coming, and he must leave. And then he leaves.
So Gandalf has found out that this is the ring, the one ring to rule them all. It took a while to figure this out because nobody knew where it was.
Yeah.
And to find that a hobbit has it, you know, it's like shocking. Well, finally, it takes him a while to leave the Shire. I was thinking about that today. You know, he's got to dispose of his property.
It took him 100 days or something like that.
Yeah, and you're reading this story. Like, I'm reading a story about hobbit legal workings. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's bad. I think it's good. Just, this is what people do. This is what real people do.
Again, hobbits are real to Karl.
They absolutely are. They absolutely are.
I get it.
I know hobbits. All the best people I know are hobbits. Right. All the orcs work in government.
Right. Yeah.
Orcs and dragons, you find them in government.
So he leaves with Sam, Merry, and Pip, and off they go where they know not, and they have trouble almost from the very beginning. They're followed almost from the very, very beginning of their journey, and along the way they have adventures and misadventures and add people to their traveling band.
Yeah, I want to talk about that for a minute. Yeah. So they have this. They go to there's a. I feel like you're going to call me a nerd again.
Might.
They go to Elrond's house. Elrond is a half elf. He chose the elf life. Apparently elves and humans can have babies, but you get to choose. You want to be human or not. And he chose the immortal life. Human. It's a long story.
Or did the elf life choose him?
No, I think he chose it. Because people choose. So, because Luthien chose differently. All the people who know this book are nodding, saying, "Yeah, Hambrick, don't you know this stuff?"
Right.
Some of us really nerd out on this. I read this thing when I was 8. Okay, I remember I had a fever. I was sitting in the bed, and my parents still have this house. I could go exactly to that spot and sit there and read this again. And I remember just the awe that I had. I was down in the underworld and you hear the drums, and I was so scared. It was very cool. So this book has been with me forever. So anyway, they go to Elrond's house. There's all these fantastic, lords from all over the place. There's like dwarves and elves, and Boromir's come up from the south, and Gandalf is there, and there's elf lords there, and they've got this ring. They don't know what to do with it. Can't we use it? No, we can't use it. We can't destroy it. There's only one way to destroy it. Okay? You have to take it to where it was made, and it was made in a volcano. How cool is that? In the heart of Mordor. So you got to go there. That's the only way you can destroy it, is to go to where its owner lives. And they don't know who's going to do it, and they're all talking about what to do it. And then Bilbo's like, "I'll do it." "Oh, no, you're too old." And then they're talking, and then it all stops. And then Frodo, "I will take the ring," he said, "though I do not know the way." So you have this little country person who's going to do the job that needs to be done. Like Sam says somewhere similar. It's like, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know where I was going. I thought I wanted to go see elves.
Right.
But now I know there's a task that I have to do. There's a job that I have to do.
Did they sign up for the Allied Expeditionary Force, and they thought, I'm just going to go see Belgium?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in there, right? So this is, his experience was time of war. Tolkien says it's not an allegory. If it was an allegory, they would have used the ring. It's not. But just because he says it doesn't mean it isn't. But, boy, when you watch those stories from the wars, oh, gosh, these are just young men, going off and doing a task. It wasn't Eisenhower in the boat.
No.
It was
Sam.
Guys from your hometown.
Sam.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then, Peter Jackson created that. It's not a documentary. People call it a documentary, that World War I film, They Shall Not Grow Old. Did you see that?
I haven't seen it yet. I mean to.
So he directed those Lord of the Rings movies, and then by and by we find out he has a huge collection of World War I weapons, uniforms, everything World War I.
Mm-hmm. Had
family members that died, were wounded in World War I, and this Tolkien connection, and then does this movie.
Yeah. Yeah, so think of the title of that, They Shall Not Grow Old.
Yeah.
Isn't that what the poetry's for?
Let me talk about They Shall Not Grow Old. I was getting all misty-eyed. Now I'm mad again. That is not a documentary. When I went and saw that movie, there was a making of kind of, 20-minute, 30-minute thing before the movie that played. And they talked about how they colorized and repaired the video, and it's all silent movies, and they hired like lip readers to read the lips of the people in the movies, and then they did voiceovers to match that. It's fascinating, and they did such a good job. But he tells this story about a soldier in World War I, but he uses all of this film, which is real live footage, and hacks it up and cuts it up and edits it all together to tell this story. It's not a documentary. It's like an animated movie where he, made a collage of existing footage. But it does a little rhetorical trick on you. Like, you watch that and you're like, oh, this happened. This is a documentary film. But it's not. It's not. And I wish they were more clear about that. But it is great, though. It's good to see. And I was glad I went and saw it.
Yeah, it's eerie. It's eerie to see moving pictures from 100 years ago.
Yeah. Every time I see a dog in an old movie, I'm like, man, that dog's been dead for 90 years,
Well, so a big part of Lord of the Rings is remembrance and kind of the fading of things going away, like the elves are moving away. If you go into the prehistory of this, when men come on the scene, one of the things that goes wrong for them is that they want to have longer and longer life because they see the elves live forever unless you kill them, but they don't. And even if you kill them, I think they come back. But the humans resent it, and so they start focusing on lengthening their lives, and they quit having children. And so their numbers go down, their strength goes down,
Do they eat soy?
I don't see soybeans in the... But so there you have that contrast of hobbits have lots of babies. You get to the appendix, you learn all the kids that Samwise ends up having.
Oh my gosh.
It's like 13 kids. And life is the good thing, but life is productive and keeps moving forward and makes new lives. I like that the story's not about Bilbo, it's about Frodo. It's about the next generation. But those old films, to me, it's like the poetry, it's like the remembrance. I saw something like a street scene from 1911.
Yeah.
That somebody posted on one of the socials, and I watched it. And it had at least been put to the right speed. My grandfather would have been 9. He wasn't in New York City, so he's not in the video, but he would have been 9. And I'm just looking at all these people and thinking about my grandfather, and this was his life, right? There's horses going down the street. There's like one or two cars. It's like Proust. We want to recall and keep all of this memory. I don't know. I guess I'm being elvish. I want to preserve it all.
Yeah.
Okay, where were we? We were talking about the journey.
Yeah,
so they go on
we were at Elrond's.
Yeah.
Is his middle name Hubbard?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, it is not Elrond Hubbard. Darn it.
Frodo says, I'll take it. I know not the way. And the Company of the Rings name, they name all of them. They say, okay, guys, it's going to be Frodo, Sam, Merry, Pippin, Aragorn, Gandalf, Gimli, Legolas, and Boromir. And you guys get it done. So they have to go, so they hit the road, and they've got to cross the Misty Mountains. We're back to Led Zeppelin again.
Yeah.
Misty Mountain Hop. And they have trouble there.
Yeah, they try to go over the mountains. The mountain's not happy. Starts throwing rocks at them. And then they have to go under the mountains, and that's when they go into the mines of Moria, which is the ancient dwarf kingdom from long, long ago. And it's really spooky. It's like there's a scene where Pippin, he's by a well. He's a younger hobbit, and he's just going to do a stupid thing. And he's like, here's a well. I'm going to drop a rock in it.
Oh, my gosh.
And it keeps going down and down and then clatters at the bottom and just echoes through this whole subterranean thing. And now, of course, the goblins, the orcs, know that they're there. And then a few pages later, you start to hear the drums. Doom, doom, doom. And the sense of dread. Can you imagine having a whole mountain on top of you and being...
Yeah, they're just running down these passages with the drums behind them.
Well, but then there's something really bad down there. The Balrog. And I don't want to I don't want to spoil it for everybody.
Yeah.
It's one of the...
Go read it.
Yeah, go read it. Go read it and see how they get away. I want to talk about Saruman for a minute, and then I want to talk about dwarves.
And then I want to talk about enchantment.
Great. So Saruman was the head of the wizards for a long, long time.
Saruman the White.
Well, he goes bad. And this is page 259, at least in my copy, if I can find it. He wants to use the ring. And he's got this argument that he makes. He says, A new power is rising. Against it, the old allies and policies will not avail us. There's one choice. We must join with the power. It would be wise. And he says, we don't have to be exactly evil. Okay? We can bide our time and keep our thoughts in our hearts, deploring maybe evils done by the way, but approving the high and ultimate purpose, knowledge, rule, order. All the things that we have so striven in vain to accomplish. There need not be any real change in our designs, but only in our means. Come on, we could do it, man. We can make things great.
This is some coffee. This is some coffee house talk right here.
Yeah, what do you mean? Tell me what you mean.
Just political machination. We have the power. If we need to seize the means or whatever.
Yeah, seize the means of production. Come on. I thought you might perk up on that knowledge, rule, and order. Is that really the goal? Knowledge, rule, and order?
I don't think so. I think I like order. But no, it's the good life, man.
I think it's biscuits and gravy.
Yeah, that's the good life. There's this Dale Watson song, My Baby Makes Me Gravy. Little grease and a little flour gives her a whole lot of power.
Yeah, I was thinking of Casey Musgraves.
Yeah.
Mind your biscuits and life will be gravy. It's one of my favorites of hers. So that temptation, right? We couldn't make things right. Just give me the power. But the means that you're going to need to do, I think the means are the ends. Let me put it that way. The means by which you do things. You can't separate means from ends. So if you're going to do bad things, or if you're going to kill a bunch of people to have the end of rule and order, no. Your end was to kill a bunch of people. The means and the ends are not separate things. I don't think you can do that. I think...
No, all the while you're having a life. Yeah. And if you spend a piece of that life in those nasty means...
But a lot of us would go Saruman's way, right?
Sure.
Yeah. Just let me get those people, to do what I think they should do. I'm the one. I'll do it right.
It can't be done right, though.
Yeah.
What is it? And then how do you.
How can you make a ring of power be a good thing? A ring of domination of will. How can domination of will and compulsion be used in the service of the good?
I don't know.
It might essentially be not good.
Right.
Elrond says you can't use it. You can't use it for good.
It subverts free will.
Yeah.
So is free will good then for Tolkien?
I think so. Gandalf says, you give me the choice of submission to Sauron or submission to you. Is there another choice?
Right.
Maybe no submission. Maybe what the world needs now is love. Sweet love.
See, you just quoted some poetry.
One more thing. There's this guy, Durin. Durin is the mythical... I guess he's not mythical. No, they're all mythical because none of them exist. But within the book, he's not mythical. He's the first dwarf. Dwarves, it's a long story. So there's these non-god gods, and one of them is impatient waiting for the elves to show up, and so he makes his own, and he makes dwarves. And he doesn't quite get it right. So they're short and they're both bearded. I guess the dwarf women have beards too, apparently. I don't know. You never see them. But Durin's the first one, and he wakes up. And he's in the mountains, and he sees all this beauty around him, and he gives names to everything. And he sees this lake in the mountains. And the mountains are so high around it that when you look in it, you can see stars, even in daytime. And he looks down into it, and he sees a crown of stars above his head. And so the dwarves will talk about Durin's crown lay at the bottom of the lake. Well, you think about it, because I think Gimli and Frodo, or maybe Sam, they go and they look in the lake and they see the stars too. Everybody sees the stars. Everybody's got the crown. Am I reading too much in that? Everybody goes to the lake, and you look, you're going to have the crown of Durin. You're all sovereign.
If you don't stir it up.
Yeah. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. But
and you let it settle, let the water settle, and you look. There you go.
Yeah, so all these little people that you think you're going to bend to your will, they're all kings.
Did this have to have all the magic in it? Does it have to have a rope that unties itself? And does it have to have mountains that throw rocks at you? And,
No.
does it have to have all that?
I don't know. I like that it does.
I do too, but I'm not deucing on that. I was literally, I've read it several times. I thought, could this story be told without that kind of thing? Everybody in this is a superhero. Virtually everybody in this is a superhero. They got these powers, and I don't know. Could it be told about regular people?
Well, do the hobbits have superpowers?
Almost. In their like innocent virtue, almost.
Innocent virtue is a superpower?
In this place, it is.
Yeah.
Do you have to have robes that hide you, cloaks that you can hide with?
I think maybe while you do it, he told the story he wanted to tell, but having it in there makes a sense of wonder.
I like it for sure. That's not a rhetorical question. I wonder if this could be told in plain everyday terms, regular kinds of people.
Well, all right. So here's a story told with regular people. Band of Brothers.
Right.
There's no magic in that.
It's true.
Ordinary people doing extraordinary things.
'Tis true.
Yeah. One of the things in here, the good that you don't see a lot. So Boromir is my favorite because, well, he almost goes very wrong.
Right.
So
he recants. Though.
He tries to get the ring from Frodo. He's very tempted by this because he puts his trust in power. He's been fighting the enemy forever. And he has a chance, he thinks, to save it out of love, right? And he wants to get the ring, and Frodo runs away. And immediately he says he's sorry. But it's his love of the hobbits that saves him, I think, because then he goes and he tries to defend Merry and Pippin, who are getting taken away by orcs, and he kills like 30 of them and ends up dead, full of arrows. But they say to him, Aragorn says to him, and I think Gandalf says later, few have won such a victory. So he was very nearly lost.
Mm.
But then there's repentance, immediate repentance, and then he does the good after that. So, like, Aragorn is never tempted.
And Aragorn was willing to not tell the story of Boromir making the play for the ring, too.
Yeah, yeah.
That only comes out later.
That's kindness to a brave comrade. But I like stories of, because I don't do the right thing all the time.
See, you get all choked up about Boromir dying. I get all choked up because Aragorn was going to keep that for him.
Yeah.
You did good. It's okay.
I'm getting choked up now.
Yep.
This book is, you got to read it. I don't suppose you have to read it, but it's so good. It's so good.
The Two Towers.
Mm-hmm.
The battle at Helm's Deep. It reads like the Iliad. I swear to you, the meters there, the imagery, there's rosy stuff.
Yeah.
There are people that have appellations, swift-footed. They don't say swift-footed Achilles and all that, but the heroes at Helm's Deep, so many of them have, Karl of the upright deadlift or upright squat. There's a lot of that. It reads like the Iliad.
Yeah.
They were besieged and they were at Troy.
Yeah.
And it's clear to me that he was giving homage to that.
Yeah. So I have been listening to it while I drive. So it's being read to me and I can hear the meter that's hidden in the prose that you don't always see when you're just reading it. The language gets elevated when there are grand deeds afoot. So there's, long ago, I saw I haven't been able to find it. I think somebody did historical critical method on Lord of the Rings, which it's a method where you read the Bible and you try to find different authors in Genesis. And so he was finding like 5 or 6 authors in Lord of the Rings. There's the Strider text, and then there's the Aragorn text, and then there's the Hobbit source. Because they're all different. They're all in different. Mm-hmm. I thought it was funny because I'm a nerd. But when you get to Helm's Deep, when you get to Rohan, there is a different kind of language, and it's heroic language. And I think it's appropriate sometimes, right?
We don't talk about all the things the same way.
Yeah, and there's times when your language maybe ought to be elevated. I recently did a powerlifting meet, a strength lifting meet.
How did that go? How were your numbers, Karl?
I set records.
Oh, pray tell. Let's write a poem about it.
I did 562 on the squat and then did a valiant attempt at 600, mighty he was under the bar.
The bar did groan under the weight.
Yes, he held his knees steady as he descended into the hole, and yet struggled up and did not prevail. I didn't prevail on 600, but I gave it a good go.
Gravity that day was greater than Karl.
Right. I did 257 on the press, and then 577 for a 2-pound PR on the deadlift, all-time PR at age 48, so I'm pretty happy about that.
We'll take it.
Yeah, but if you're in line to lift at one of these things, I think you kind of get elevated. You might joke and everything, but you're encouraging people to go do great deeds. You got this. You're a hero. You've trained for this. The language can make you be the thing that the language tells you are. And so we haven't even talked. When Gandalf shows up to Theoden, Theoden is an old king who is bent and like he's in despair. And he's just sitting.
Make me lose my shit.
He's sitting in the dark.
He thinks he's done.
Yeah. And what does Gandalf say to him? He says, well, first he has to get rid of Grima, Wormtongue. He's been whispering to him, yeah, you are done.
Just undermining him.
Yeah.
Like that which is him, like undermining the self in that guy. Wormtongue is just doubt and naysaying personified.
And Gandalf says something like, you would remember your strength better if you grabbed your sword. I wrote something on this a while back about strength training for older folks, grab the barbell. And you don't have to be weak. You don't have to give in to failure. You don't have to not be a hero.
And everyone appears taller just before they undertake the thing. In this book, they all get taller.
Yeah.
In the years fall away from him, and he gets taller. And his arm appears stronger. Everything.
Yeah. Can I read a little bit of this?
Do it.
This is page 514. I have like all three editions together, so if you're looking for it. Gandalf comes in. Now, Theoden, son of Thengel, will you hearken to me? Do you ask for help? He lifted his staff and pointed to a high window. There the darkness seemed to clear, and through the opening could be seen high and far a patch of shining sky. Not all is dark. Take courage, Lord of the Mark, for better help you will not find. No counsel have I to give to those that despair. Yet counsel I could give, and words I could speak to you. Will you hear them? They're not for all ears. I bid you come out before your doors and look abroad. Too long have you sat in shadows and trusted to twisted tales and crooked promptings. And then slowly Theoden left his chair. He gets up, right? And all of his people who have been just huddling in it's like an old man's sick room, They're so excited. Open! The Lord of the Mark comes forth. They're opening the doors. Finally, their king is stepping forth to do what he's supposed to do, right? He's supposed to protect them, and they're supposed to help him protect them. He's like on his staff and everything. And then Theoden says, as he opens the door and he's looking out at his glorious, beautiful country, and he says, it is not so dark here. And Gandalf says, nor does age lie so heavily on your shoulders as some would have you think. Cast aside your prop. So he drops his staff. Now, tall and straight he stood, and his eyes were blue as he looked into the opening sky. Dark have been my dreams of late, but I feel as one new awakened. Oh, it's so good. And Theoden himself, he's like, I had these great fathers that did these wonderful things, and here I am, and I've done nothing. And he's just shrinking. And Gandalf gives him the occasion to be glorious. Well, and he's going to, when you get to Return of the King, there's some good Theoden stuff. I don't know if you've gotten there yet.
Not there yet. Getting close. I think that's about half of it. I mean, I don't know. How do you talk about half of this damn thing? I've enjoyed it. I think it's going to make the cut. We'll come back in 200 or 300 years and see.
Yeah. Not me, brother. Maybe you will.
Yeah. It's epic. I know that's become a cliche, but it truly is.
Yeah.
It's a huge, huge, huge story. The story is so big and the world's so big, it doesn't have any edges. At times it has rhyme and meter. Sometimes the prose has rhyme and meter. He's built languages and worlds, and he gives homage to everything that came before him. Like I said, you could smell the Odyssey and the Iliad in this. You can smell Beowulf. So many of the names are like the Saxon kings. Mm-hmm. The names of the Saxon kings. It's English through and through. It's important.
Yeah.
It's important. Somehow he wrote something very important about Englishness without writing about English people.
Yeah.
I mean, is there anything more English maybe? I mean, I'm over here in Oklahoma thinking about England or whatever, but is there anything more English than this thing? Like, this is more English than the Queen. It's certainly more English than Harry.
Yeah, than Harry Potter, yeah. Yeah.
No, Prince Harry.
Oh, Prince Harry or Harry Potter, who draws on this too. I want to say the thing has been so popular for so long that it can be parodied, that a lot of people hang on it and make fun of it, and it's in a couple of Led Zeppelin songs. It's in Ramble On.
Stairway to Heaven smells like it.
Yeah.
All the imagery in there, if it's not explicitly about it, it certainly steals or borrows or is an homage to it.
Yeah. But what I want you to do, those of you who listen to us, don't let that spoil it for you. It's really good. It's like people make fun of Casablanca. Here's looking at you, kid.
It's a great movie.
It's so good. You have to give yourself a chance to see the greatness that inspired all the people making fun of it.
And by the way, my reading, I haven't hardly made any notes. I've just been reading it because that's what I wanted to do. There'll be times for notes at another time. I've just read it to like it, and I have. I think it makes the cut one day. It's new. There had been nothing like this before, right, as far as I know. When you're new, it's groundbreaking.
Can you imagine pitching this to the publisher?
Yeah, I don't even know.
It's like... So he and C.S. Lewis were friends and used to get together. So the character of Treebeard is apparently modeled on C.S. Lewis. The way that he talks, "Don't be hasty, Master Hobbit," But so they would get together and read their stuff to each other. Like C.S. Lewis apparently is like, "Oh no, not another bloody elf."
Right.
I'm going to tell you a story about elves and dwarves and orcs and what? What is an elf? Do you mean like fairies with wings? No. They're much more serious than that. It's so unique that you forgot how unique it is because it's changed everything that came after it.
It changed everything. I was reading this thinking about how it had even changed science fiction. There are these epic science fiction world creation kinds of series, Asimov's stuff. And I mean, it's stealing the card from him, and, it's a good thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got Orwell creating his languages, and Anthony Burgess creating language and stuff for their dystopian books later. Lewis Carroll did a little of that kind of stuff. There have been some people before, but nobody with the kind of thoroughness that Tolkien does.
If you want to go full nerd on this, you can actually learn Elvish.
Right.
I have
because
not.
It has a grammar.
Right.
It has a grammar. It's a real thing. He didn't just make up silly words.
So I occasionally use a really nerdy typesetting system called Tech or LaTeX. You've got fonts there for the High Elven script. You have fonts for the Dwarven script. You have fonts for the Lower Elven stuff that they did later after a couple thousand years. People have done this because he wrote them out, and people have made them into fonts that you can... And yeah, they're nerds for doing it. I know. It's like translating the Bible into Klingon.
I happen to know that you bought a special font that is your favorite band's font, which is Wolfpack.
Yeah, I did. I bought Wolf Mono. Yeah. Yeah, I like fonts. I like typesetting. We're learning a little too much about me. So no, you don't need to go to that level of nerd to enjoy the book. But you can if you want, because it's there.
I've tried to just give it just a plain vanilla reading. And I think I have, and it's just been a lot of fun. There's so much in there. There's no point in doing a deep dive on the thing the first time. It's too much. It's too much in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know. There's part one. We'll come back and talk about the end of this thing here in another week or two.
Yeah.
We've got all kinds of goodies on the slate. Really, I'm kind of excited.
I'm never going to have time to watch television again.
Good.
It's a good thing. All my pop culture knowledge will have peaked in 2019, and then I'm not going to know anything else ever.
What is the best year for one's pop culture knowledge to have peaked?
Oh, it should have peaked in 1987.
87? That was it? That was the pinnacle?
Well, that's when I should have stopped paying attention.
Oh, I see. Right.
Bruce Springsteen and I don't know, Star Wars, Return of the Jedi, and whatever else was in the 80s. ZZ Top. That should be it. That's the end.
Gosh. All right. There's another Online Great Books podcast. We don't read this book in our program, although one day we might. I think it's a great one. Thank you for twisting my arm and making me read it, Uncle Karl.
Yeah.
And congrats to you on your PRs, man. Your personal records on the weight room.
Yeah, I was pretty happy about it. Imagine if I'd slept that week.
Right. It was a hard week.
Yeah.
But it all came out well. We'll do a Barbell Logic podcast with you soon. We'll talk about lifting for glory.
All right. Very good.
All right. Thank you guys so much for listening. Please go to iTunes and give us a review. We need those reviews. Help us drive this little weird podcast up and attract more of you weird folks that like weird things like this. It ain't easy. We're looking for needles in the haystack, so help us find some. People that are interested in this are kind of few and far between, Karl.
Yeah.
That's okay. When we find each other, we recognize each other, and then are friends forever because we like the same things.
It's like Gimli and Galadriel.
That's right.
Right.
Thank you all for listening.